Hi everyone, welcome back to part 2 of our tutorial series on Canon 8K 180 VR stereo workflows. Thanks to Sam Baumel for providing some footage for this tutorial. See some of his work on sambaumel.com. Now in part 1 we were looking at importing Canon 180 VR clips into Scratch, flagging them accordingly as 180 degree VR stereo clips to view inside a headset, applying an STmap to unwarp the fisheye footage. We graded the footage and finally transcoded it to 2 different formats. In this video I'll show you how to work in a true stereo VR environment inside Scratch, grade and frame left and right eyes separately, retouch the footage using vector paint, and export to different stereo patterns. Alright, let's get started. We're back in our timeline with all our clips. If we quickly step into Color Effects, we can see that all of them have the STmap layer on them and are correctly dewarped. Back to Construct. What we'll now do is to create a stereo setup by hitting the corresponding button down here. For this to work correctly, it's essential that we flag the clips correctly as equirectangular 180 and left-right stereo prior to the stereo setup. Done. As you can see, our clips are now basically half the resolution, only showing one eye of the two. Rest assured, both eyes are in there, but before we continue, let's set our timeline resolution to our node resolution by just dropping the just created stereo node onto the label down here. Now let's enter Color Effects and take a look at what happened under the hood. For this, we bring up the right side stack and switch to the node tree. As you can see, we start with the base shot on both branches. That shot has the lens undistort node feeding onto a layer. The reason for only being able to see the plugin node on either branch is that the median node itself is actually not duplicated, but only loaded once, and the other branch, or eye so to speak, is a live reference to that, as indicated by the dotted line here. Let me quickly show you what this means. I'll select the left eye and make the grade noticeably darker. Now let me switch to the right eye. As you can see, that also is now much darker than before. If I reset the gamma parameter here, it will automatically be reset on the other branch too. The reason for doing this is performance. The underlying shot only needs to be decoded once and also the grade only needs to be applied once. Let's move on with the node tree. Each shot goes into a transformer node, shifting the image to the left or right in order to frame just the left or right eye. And lastly, both of these feed into the stereo node on top. To work more efficiently with the stereo node, let me pull up the stereo tool from the top menu bar. In here, we can first choose which eye we want to look at in the viewport, and next, whether we want to work on an individual eye, meaning either one of the 2 transformer nodes down here, or the master, which would be the stereo node on top affecting both eyes. Let me show you real quick. Swipe away the node tree and select right and eye. So anything I do now will be on the right eye only. Let's make it red. If I now switch to the left eye, I not only see it in the viewport, but now automatically can start working on it. Let me make it blue. Back to our node tree, where did our grades go? As you can see, they reside on the transformer nodes for each eye. Back to the stereo node, and now let's select master to grade on and dial down the saturation. This adjustment now happens on the stereo node. As you can see, if I select the individual eyes here in the node tree, I can still see the red and blue grade, but the desaturation I will only see once I select the top level node, which is the stereo node holding that grade. Let me reset the saturation but keep the red and blue grades just for the sake of differentiation. Another thing we might want to take care of here is the convergence of left and right eyes. For this, let me adjust the view first, because we can't possibly work on convergence by looking at just one eye at a time, now can we? Jump into dual view by pressing hotkey D or hitting this button right here in the viewport controls. If you want to zoom and position the 2 views independently, simply disable the link button right here. Now as you can see, if I switch between left and right eye in the stereo tool, only the left side changes accordingly. The right side will stay on the left eye. If we now go to Settings, Monitors, we can tell Scratch what we would like to see on the right side. The default is set to left eye, but we can pick any other pattern like side by side, difference, or anaglyph. If we now exit the settings and go to the framing menu, we can take care of the framing as such and move the entire frame around. If we enable convergence and then dial in a yaw offset, we can easily align the big wheel in the background, for instance. Nice. If we now check into the respective nodes for each eye, we can see that the offset is positive on one and negative on the other. Back to the stereo node. Let's now lose the lens in each eye. If the camera was static and not much action going on in the image, we could simply paint out the lens using the Vector Paint plugin on each eye. Let me quickly show you how to do this. Make sure you have selected the individual eye in the stereo tool, add a layer, go to Plugins, and add the Vector Paint tool. Now all we have to do is select the Clone Brush tool, hold down Ctrl, and drag from the source area on the image to the target area. And paint. Of course, if I now hit play, we will see the seam and cloning much more than on a still frame. So in our case, we could just zoom into the frame in order to cut off the lens. Which we have to do anyways in order to not have pillow boxes on the other side anyways. Here we go. Nice. Okay. We're now ready to render out, so on to the Render tab. In here, things now work a little different from the last time, as we are now able to render out different flavors of our stereoscopic footage. What do I mean by that? Well, our main output node, or in other words our timeline, currently has the resolution of one single eye. Of course, we aim to output both eyes, so how do we go about that? First thing to add is a stereo generator node. In the Format Settings tab, we can choose what it should grab from the stereo setup, like the left eye only. In parallel, we could add another stereo generator and set that to output the right eye. Now we simply add encoder nodes behind each stereo generator and off we go. But as you can see, we have a few other options available here. Let me delete all this and start over. Add the stereo generator again, and now double-click it to enter color effects with it. We have now entered color effects not with the individual clip, but with the entire timeline, and everything we do now in here will affect all clips equally. Let's go to the node menu and flip through the options. They are the exact same settings as in the Format Settings tab on the render page. But inside the color effects tab, we can better see what they do. Now let's say we want to get a side-by-side image out of Scratch again. Let's select that option. As you can see, both eyes are now squeezed into the frame. In some cases that's wanted, but ideally we double the horizontal resolution of our output in order to fit in both eyes at their full resolution. We can do that in two ways. Here in Color Effects, we can go to the Media menu and dial in the resolution we'd like the stereo generator node to have. Alternatively, we can also do that here in the Render tab. Simply click into the numeric field for the calculator to pop up, multiply by 2 and hit Enter. Done. Checking back into Color Effects, we can confirm that now both eyes are present at their full resolution. All we have to do now is add an encoder node behind the stereo generator, configure it, and render it out. Details on that are in the first part about Canon 180 VR stereo workflows. As a side note, all of what you have seen in these two videos can also be done live and in real time to a live HDMI feed from the Canon R5 and output to a headset using our virtual production solution LiveFX. And that's it for stitching Canon VR180 stereo material inside Scratch. Hope this was useful to you and see you next time. Bye.